Hello, everyone. I'm Joel Darrington with DPR Construction, and I've been asked to give my friends at LCI an introduction to a new contracting resource recently published by ConsensusDocs. As some of you may know, the Lean Construction Institute is part of the ConsensusDocs Coalition of industry groups that approves and promotes standard forms of contract documents for the construction industry. Our LCI members will be particularly interested in the new ConsensusDocs 305 Lean Construction Addendum that was released last month. I was privileged to be a key member of the working group that developed the CD 305 Lean Construction Addendum, so I know just a thing or two about it. Okay, so right off the bat, people probably want to know, what is this ConsensusDocs 305? So let's be clear right up front. This is not a complete contract. There are no compensation terms, no schedule, no project scope. Instead, the CD 305 is a document you add to an owner contract to provide for certain selected Lean project features. So check out this graphic. There's a contract between the owner and the architect, and there is a separate contract between the owner and the constructor. The CD 305 is meant to be an addendum to both of those contracts to transform them into contracts supporting Lean projects. Let's back up a bit and talk about some different ways parties typically contract for Lean projects. To get the highest level of Lean performance, projects would use integrated project delivery agreements. Most IPD agreements, such as the ConsensusDocs 300, explicitly provide for a robust set of Lean project delivery features. In fact, the CD 305 intentionally borrows language from the CD 300 on the various Lean design and construction features it includes. But for a variety of reasons, some project teams are not willing or able to use an IPD agreement. In those situations, some owners have worked with their legal counsel to custom draft design and construction contracts under more conventional project delivery models such as CM at risk, so that they will include certain IPD-like features. These agreements typically address most or all of the same Lean design and construction methodologies that IPD agreements address, but without the supporting contractual attributes of IPD. Other owners will settle with adding a few vague references to Lean in their standard contract forms, and then seek to promote Lean behaviors among the project team, independent of what is in the design and construction contracts. Well, now we have a new option for project teams that want a Lean project and yet cannot implement an IPD agreement. For the first time, we have a non-IPD contract document available to the whole industry that provides for a wide spectrum of Lean practices. With the CD 305, owners no longer have to commission their legal counsel to custom draft entirely new IPD-like design and construction contracts, nor do they need to settle for a few vague references to Lean construction added to their standard contracts. With the CD 305, an owner can use either an industry form front-end contract or its own standard contract and add to it a Lean construction addendum that reflects the best thinking in the industry around Lean design and construction practices. While the CD 305 works great with the ConsensusDocs own construction manager agreement form, it can easily be used with other contract forms and doesn't depend on only using ConsensusDocs forms for the front-end design and construction contracts. To be clear, the CD 305 is something a project would add to both the design professional's contract with the owner and to the construction manager's or general contractor's contract with the owner. However, the CD 305 is set up to only apply to situations where the owner is separately contracting with the architect and the constructor. If you're in a design-build contract, the CD 305 is not suited for that situation. But stay tuned, as ConsensusDocs is exploring creating an alternative version of a Lean construction addendum for design-build contracts. So how is the CD 305 different than an IPD agreement like the ConsensusDocs 300? In IPD, the owner, architect, and construction manager all jointly sign a single contract, with the key design consultants and trade contractors that put their profit at risk also brought into the contract, either as direct signatories or through special joining agreements. IPD is a whole different contractual model with unique features that include limited liability, joint project governance, and open book compensation with only a service provider's profit at risk for cost overruns. Like the CD 305, IPD agreements typically provide for a robust set of Lean project features. However, to repeat again, the CD305 is not a complete contract document. It is an addendum to the separate agreements of the owner with the architect and the GC, and then passed through to the lower tier consulting and trade contracts. So if you look at the graphic on the right, the bidirectional arrows show the contracts for the project. The CD305 gets added to each of those contracts. The CD305 doesn't change anything about the compensation or liability of the parties under the contracts it gets attached to. Its exclusive focus is providing clear and definite terms for the parties to agree on how they will incorporate Lean design and construction methods into their project. So why bother with using a Lean construction addendum when you can just stay silent in the contract and implement Lean on the ground? I think the best reason to address Lean design and construction methods in your contract gets to the very heart of why we use contracts at all. By getting together and figuring out what everyone is agreeing to and getting it in writing, the parties get better alignment about who is responsible for what and how they're going to do it. A team could get alignment in other ways, but the increased formality of putting it in the contract helps everyone take it more seriously and make sure it's right. My former colleague Howard Ashcraft has wisely observed that negotiating the IPD agreement is the first collaborative act of the IPD team and sets the stage for future collaboration. We could say the same thing about a project team going through the CD305 together and everyone determining how to implement Lean on their project. If you use the CD305, you're also going to get some detailed, state-of-the-art language establishing parameters for the project team's implementation of Lean project delivery. The project team can evaluate the language, check the boxes, and adjust language as needed for their particular project, and thus get to a clearer set of parameters for how they are going to implement Lean than if they started from scratch trying to figure out these parameters just among the team themselves. Another important consideration. Remember that the CD305 is meant to be used with conventional front-end design and construction contracts. In many instances, those front-end agreements will contain language that gets in the way of Lean project delivery. The language of the CD305 provides that it will override any conflicting language in the front-end agreement so that teams can make sure their implementation of Lean design and construction is not triggering problems later because of conflicting contract language. For example, the owner's standard construction contract could contain provisions around project scheduling that would interfere with the pull planning system that the team wants to implement, such as the last planner system. By using the CD305, the addendum allows for the pull planning system to be used without a breach of contract. Last of all, by having all the key team members contractually agreeing to perform Lean design and construction methods, the upstream contracting party can enforce these obligations against a team member that fails to perform them. But be careful here. The point of the CD305 is not to make the contract into a hammer to force team members to be Lean. It is meant rather to be a tool to help team members align about how they want to be Lean on their project. Okay, so that covers what the CD305 is and why a project would want to use it. Now let's talk about when and how to use the CD305. When should a project use a CD305 with their contracts? When we were developing it, we saw a real need out there for a way for project teams to contract for Lean project delivery when, for whatever reason, they're not going to use an IPD agreement. So the CD305 is meant to be used when you have an owner, architect, and contractor that are committed to implementing Lean project delivery in some way, but one or more of them are not ready or able to enter into an IPD agreement. For example, the owner may have a strong interest in Lean, but does not have institutional buy-in for integrated project delivery. Or the owner has a source of financing that prevents the use of IPD. You could also have a public owner whose procurement laws or regulations will not allow for IPD. Or the owner could be fully on board with both IPD and Lean, but a key project team member, such as the architect or GC, is not ready to commit to IPD, but is otherwise committed to using Lean methodologies. In any of those common situations, the CD305 can help the team implement Lean project delivery and improve the chances of success on their project. In terms of project chronology, we recommend finalizing the CD305 as early in the project as the owner can accommodate. Certain Lean project features are geared towards the beginning of the project and others towards the design phase. So a team can lose the benefit of those valuable Lean features by waiting until later in the project. That said, there is still value in implementing Lean only during the construction phase. So if that's your situation, you can still use the CD305. How do you use the CD305? Well, as previously described, the CD305 is an addendum to the contracts between the owner and each of the architect and constructor. Because it is attached to both agreements, it requires a joint negotiation between the owner, architect, and constructor, and ideally their key design consultants and trades. Once the CD305 is finalized among the parties, then it gets separately attached and incorporated into each party's contract for the project, binding everyone to the same set of Lean construction contract provisions. The CD305 is designed to be flexible so that it can be adapted to a variety of project contexts and Lean deployments. It uses a check-the-box approach to allow project teams to select the Lean features that will apply to their project and at various points in the project chronology. So let's look at how this could play out in a few scenarios. To set the stage, we need to show you the typical chronology of an IPD project. Again, the CD305 isn't an IPD agreement, but many of its Lean features mirror those in the CD300 IPD agreement. The CD305 can, depending on how you check the boxes, provide for Lean activities in any or all of these different project phases. In a full implementation of IPD, the team starts with the validation phase, in which the owner presents the team with its allowable cost and its project program. The allowable cost is the maximum cost established by the owner to meet its project program. If the owner's program can't be done for the allowable cost, then the owner won't do the project. So the validation phase is an effort by the IPD team to validate whether the project described in the owner's program can be designed and constructed within the allowable cost. If the team can't validate the owner's program and allowable cost, then the owner either adjusts the program or allowable cost, or both, or the project terminates. Assuming the team is able to validate the program, then based on the outcome of the validation effort, the parties agree on an expected cost, which is their best estimate of the project cost. At the same time, the parties agree on a target cost, which is the party's stretch goal for the final project cost and then serves as a basis for target value design during the pre-construction phase. Both the expected cost and target cost are documented in the approved validation study. Look at the graphic here. You'll notice that these different cost benchmarks are plotted on a downward curve. This curve represents the project cost over the course of the project time. The goal and typical outcome in IPD is that as the team learns more about the project and deploys the efficiencies and innovations that Lean unlocks, then the cost goes down over time. Now, obviously, that's not inevitable, and it's certainly not a smooth curve as shown here. Once the validation study is approved, then the team moves into the pre-construction phase, where they design the project and plan for construction. And while it doesn't have to be at the absolute end of the pre-construction phase, the team typically commits to a contract price for the construction phase when the design is all or mostly complete. Then the team builds the project, and at the end you have the actual cost, which is the total of how much the owner has paid the team for the project. To repeat, the CD305 does not require that a team go through all of these phases. Depending on the project's context, some or all of these phases may be addressed in your project's final CD305. We accomplish this through a series of check-the-box provisions. So here's the scenarios I told you about. In this first example, the owner desires a robust Lean implementation from the beginning of the project. They determine they don't need a joint worksite investigation because of the owner's previous extensive site due diligence. So they don't check the box for section 6.1 of the CD305. However, they do check the boxes for the remaining validation phase and pre-construction phase provisions, so that the team will evaluate the owner's program, perform a validation study, provide for extensive cost modeling by the constructor throughout the project, engage in an integrated design process using target value design principles, and undergo a major risk identification and management effort. Also note that the CD305 does not have a checkbox for construction phase activities. If the team is going to use the CD305, then they're certainly going to use it for the construction phase. In example 2 here, the owner has passed the point of validation when it determines to pursue Lean project delivery. They bring on the architect and constructor from the beginning of the design to engage in an integrated design process using target value design, together with the continuous cost modeling of the constructor and the team's risk identification and management effort. Then they'll continue on to deploy Lean methods during the construction phase. So that's example 2. In this third example, the owner didn't discover Lean until the project is mostly designed. The architect is willing to participate in a Lean project for the construction phase, and the contractor is selected for its Lean expertise. They negotiate a CD305 to incorporate it into both the design and construction agreements, and that provides for an initial risk identification and management effort, and then proceed to the construction phase's Lean delivery. So each of these 3 examples represents a very different type of Lean deployment, but each can be facilitated through the CD305 by just checking the appropriate boxes. Those of you who know something about IPD are probably wondering, what about contract incentives that are tied to performance? The short answer is that the CD305 doesn't address incentives directly, or in that matter, do anything to change the way that compensation works under the front-end agreement. However, I will point out that the CD305 does provide for the core group to establish a performance improvement program. I'll talk more about the core group later, but it certainly is possible for a project team to develop a performance improvement program that gets tied in some way to incentive compensation. For example, the performance improvement program will establish key performance indicators to gauge performance and stimulate continuous improvement. To incentivize improved performance against these KPIs, the project team could enter into an amendment to their contract that provides for owner-funded award fees that the project team earns based on how well they meet the KPIs. If a project team mutually agrees upon some system of incentive compensation, then they would need to address that through an amendment to their respective project contracts. Let's move now more into the content of the Lean Construction Addendum. Article 3 of the CD305 starts off by laying out the vision of Lean project delivery, which has sometimes been described as the 5 big ideas. Many of you have heard them before. They are 1, collaborating throughout the project with all members of the design and construction team. 2, planning and managing the project as a network of commitments. 3, optimizing the project as a whole rather than any particular piece. 4, tightly coupling learning with action, which promotes continuous improvement throughout the life of the project. And 5, increased relatedness. This 5th one is actually not explicitly stated in the CD305, but is folded into the concepts of collaboration and network of commitments. Article 3 of the Lean Construction Addendum also describes the principle of making reliable commitments and keeping them, which is the fundamental building block for reliable workflow and the process of planning and managing the project as a network of commitments. The CD305 also provides for a collaborative leadership structure. Moving into Article 4, it describes the core group, both its formation and function. Each of the owner, design professional, and constructor appoint a representative to the core group that is empowered to direct and coordinate its company's work. The core group together manages the work using Lean methods for the best interest of the project. They are responsible for the key decisions on the project, and they make decisions on the basis of consensus. If they cannot come to a unanimous decision, the owner may issue directions it believes to be in the best interest of the project, but that will be subject to any further dispute resolution provisions of the contract to which the addendum is attached. Besides just making sure the work gets done, the core group plays an important role in promoting Lean behaviors and continuous improvement. I mentioned the performance improvement program earlier. That provides a structured way for the project team to establish key performance indicators and be held accountable to them by the core group through regular performance evaluations. The goal is not punishment, though, but continuous improvement. Article 5 requires the project team to use a pull scheduling approach to planning and scheduling the work. The CD305 describes certain features of the planning system that the team must incorporate, all of which would be satisfied by a full implementation of the last planner system that LCI advocates. The core group would also be responsible for putting together a project communications protocol to provide for effective project communications, both in meetings and through electronic communications. Remember this graphic from earlier? We're now moving out of the general Lean principles into the specific Lean activities at different points in the project chronology. We'll start with provisions 6.1 through 6.3 of the CD305, which describe validation phase activities and responsibilities. Again, these provisions only apply if the parties have checked the boxes electing each of them. So a project doesn't have to have a validation phase in order to use the CD305. If the team elects section 6.1, then the core group is going to evaluate what site information is needed based on a review of what the owner provides by way of site documentation and the team's own site observations. The core group will consult with the project team to come up with options for different levels of site investigations, together with cost-benefit analysis. Following this analysis, the core group will determine the level of job site investigations to be undertaken by the constructor and the design professional. After the project team has made their joint worksite investigation, the core group will prepare a report of their findings and their resulting recommendations for the project. So that's section 6.1 in a nutshell. Section 6.2 provides for the design professional and constructor to evaluate the owner's program to see if it needs further development. If the owner is still putting together its program, then 6.2 provides for the core group to assist the owner in further developing it. The project team will review the owner's program, confer with each other to confirm understanding and verify requirements. They will then provide a joint preliminary evaluation of the owner's program, including any recommended changes, to the core group for approval. Section 6.2 also provides for certain areas that the team should consider in evaluating the program and allows the project team to propose alternative systems to the core group so that they can review whether that's going to better meet the owner's objectives. If the owner wants a validation phase, then it needs to check the box for section 6.3, which provides for the core validation effort. Once we have a confirmed owner's program, then the validation effort involves the design professional and constructor evaluating whether the owner's program can be completed within the allowable cost. Assuming the project team can validate that, then the validation study will include the proposed expected cost and the proposed project schedule, along with the proposed target cost. If at any time it looks to the team like the expected cost will exceed the allowable cost, then the owner has a major decision to make. It could decide it needs the full owner's program and increase the allowable cost. It could ask the project team to collaborate on proposed revisions to the owner's program and to their validation efforts to date that will allow the project team to propose an expected cost within the allowable cost. Or the owner could terminate the project as simply having no viable business case. The final validation study is presented to the owner for its acceptance. If accepted, it provides the parameters for the project team's pre-construction phase efforts. If the parties have checked the boxes for sections 6.4 and 6.5 of the CD305, then there will be a pre-construction phase with the Lean features of continuous cost modeling and target value design. Section 6.4 provides for the constructor to provide continuous cost modeling and analysis of the ongoing design effort. This provides the design team the information it needs in order to accomplish target value design and helps the core group assure the work is within the expected cost and trending towards the target cost. If the trends are in the wrong direction, then the core group directs the specific actions to take to maintain the cost objectives. Section 6.4 also provides for the constructor to provide cost information and estimates that are requested by the core group during the construction phase as well. The heart of the CD305's pre-construction phase features is found in section 6.5, which describes an integrated design process featuring target value design, or TVD for short. We won't get into the details of TVD on this introductory presentation, but I'll just note that TVD is one of the key Lean design and construction methods for achieving greater project value. It requires intense collaboration of the designers and constructors and a disciplined approach to value determination and decision-making. TVD is greatly benefited by set-based design and building information modeling. The CD305 provides for the core group to develop TVD protocols and a BIM execution plan to guide the team's design efforts and to establish TVD clusters for designing the different building systems and components. Section 6.6 provides a check-the-box to elect for the project team to undergo an intensive risk evaluation and mitigation process. Many Lean projects are familiar with the process of using a risk register. The Section 6.6 provides a process to produce and implement a risk register. It involves a risk workshop to identify and evaluate risks, followed by the preparation of a risk register that describes the risks of concern and the team member who is responsible for monitoring and leading team efforts at managing that risk. Finally, a risk management plan is developed to put in place contingency plans for addressing specific risks. The last article of the Lean Construction Addendum provides for construction phase Lean methods. Section 7.1 provides for a Lean approach to quality. To avoid addressing quality primarily through rework, it provides for the team to develop and implement a built-in quality plan. The focus is on establishing standardized work, agreed upon levels of quality, good handoffs of work between trades, and continuous improvement. It also provides for the construction team to develop an operations quality plan using 5S principles: sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain. Section 7.2 requires the constructor to develop and receive approval for a materials logistics plan that promotes just-in-time delivery of material to the worksite, consistent with the current pool planning work plan. In Section 7.3 and 7.4, the CD305 provides for a Lean approach to submittals and requests for information. The basic idea is that the team member needing the information directly contacts the team member who can provide the information. Together, they figure out the resolution and then document the resolution for the benefit of the entire project team. Last of all, Section 7.5 provides for the project team to develop a phase plan specific to closing out the project, so that everyone is aligned as to what needs to be done to satisfy the project stakeholders without needing a long process of inspections and re-inspections for reaching substantial completion. Well, that's it for our introduction to the new ConsensusDocs 305 Lean Construction Addendum. We've gone pretty fast and have just really skimmed the surface. We did a 90-minute webinar that goes into more detail, which you can find on the ConsensusDocs website. Check it out if you'd like to know more or obtain a free sample of the CD305 Lean Construction Addendum. Thank you for your interest in the CD305 Lean Construction Addendum. I wish you all success in your Lean journeys. Farewell.